Nothing like 95 degrees and the governor's late, huh? And we're New Haven. We try so hard to get everything just right, and of course, during the drought, the sprinklers go off for just a moment. We're working on getting that fixed, but appreciate everyone's patience here. And very excited to be here today to kick this off. Welcome to New Haven. I'm sure all of you have been here before and love to come here. It's one of your probably top cities in Connecticut that you like to visit and enjoy. So excited. You know, I was just thinking back to when Senator Looney, Senator Cohn, Senator Haskell, Representative Lamar, and I were doing a press conference, I don't know, it was maybe 6 months ago, about this bill over in the Worcester Square area next to a highway, next to a school. And you never know if these things are going to make it through make it through period, or make it through in the form that actually has the meat that gets things done. It is just wonderful to be here today to celebrate with this group what was accomplished by the governor, his team, and the state legislators. Just real quick, I'm excited as a driver for this bill. I'm excited as a driver because my city car is an electric vehicle, and goodness knows if you go out in New Haven, you're never quite sure where the next charging station is going to be, and if you can make it back. I actually, on a cold winter day, was out there, had to turn off the heat because I didn't know if I was going to make it back. So having more charging stations all over the state will make it easier for people to opt into electric vehicles. I'm excited as a driver because signalization in New Haven and a lot of other cities is tough because our signals are not synchronized, and so it slows you down, creates idling. This will help facilitate us making it easier for drivers. I'm excited as a cyclist. I love cycling around the city. I use my legs, but a lot of people maybe don't want to use their legs as much as the electric vehicles, and having many more people that are opting into cycling is going to help us support more infrastructure to ensure that people have other opportunities. I'm excited as a public transit rider and the environmental issues, but also the fact that we will reduce the emissions as a public transit rider. There's a lot of investment in public buses, in particular public school buses, which is huge. But most importantly, I'm excited as a citizen and a dad. There has not been the leadership at the nation that we'd like to see on climate change, but we see that leadership here with so many of the people that have been working hard behind me. And every day when I put my daughter on the school bus to go to school, I think about her future here in New Haven. And the reality is that in New Haven has the highest asthma rate in the state and has by far the most asthma-related hospitalizations in the state. Life expectancy of a child born in certain neighborhoods of New Haven is as much as nearly 15 years shorter. Imagine that, 15 years shorter than in our neighboring communities, according to Data Haven. This is a game changer. We're so excited for the governor's leadership and his team and our state partners, and I am going to pass it over to somebody else, and I don't know who's next on the agenda, but they're just going to show up.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Mayor Elliker, for kicking us off and for hosting us here in the great city of New Haven. My name is Katie Dykes, and I'm the Commissioner at the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And I am so excited about this event today for the leadership and the support that we have here in the General Assembly in the state of Connecticut with Governor Lamont at the helm to be making a difference on clean transportation, cleaner air, and our climate future here in our state. We know there's been some, challenging, some disappointing news that we've been hearing out of Washington over the last couple of weeks. The Supreme Court taking steps to undermine EPA's authority to be able to implement federal programs that can provide for climate and air pollution regulations across the country. We've seen some challenges in Congress in getting highly popular packages of legislation forward that will help to spur the adoption of clean and climate solutions all across the state, or all across the country. But at this moment, it's a time when often people turn back and look at the states and say it's up to the states and it's back to the states to lead on climate. Well, we've been leading on climate for 2 decades now in the state of Connecticut, and we're going to continue to lead on climate. And this bill that we're talking about today, now Public Act 22-25, is the most significant clean transportation and climate legislation we have adopted in Connecticut's history. And it is really what this represents Connecticut at our best. We are a small state, and people ask me all the time, what can a state of this size actually do to solve climate change? But what we do here when we lead in Connecticut is that we demonstrate the possibility. We show how these technologies can be adopted. We develop the models. We spur industry to be investing. We help create the markets, the early adoption of these technologies, including electric school buses, electric transit buses, providing for equitable, affordable access for electric vehicles and electric bikes all across our state. And when we do that, we show how it gets done, and other jurisdictions, other states, whether they're purple or red, they follow along. And that's how states lead, and that's how we've been leading for 2 decades, and that's what we're doing with this legislation. I'm so proud of the leadership and support, the partnership that we've had with the General Assembly. You're going to hear from so many who've been at the lead of getting this bill across the line. I have to say, in the few weeks since this bill reached the governor's desk, we've been extremely busy at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection with the implementation already. And so I just want to say we're busy, and we're going to keep all of the stakeholders and advocates busy who've been involved in crafting this bill. We are working already. We had a public meeting yesterday to get input on how to design the state's very first electric bike voucher program. We have received already opened up a process to get input on how we can best deploy the $20 million in bonding that's supported in this legislation for electric school buses. Those dollars are going to help us better attract even more funds from the federal government through the infrastructure bill. $5 billion that EPA has to put out into the market across the country for adoption of electric school buses. And the target that's in this legislation, the complementary funding that's authorized in this legislation, means that for once, Connecticut's going to get more than our share of those dollars coming to our communities. That means cleaner air, Mayor Elicker, for your daughter and for all of our kids across the state of Connecticut. So we have a great website where we've put together with all the implementation that's going on with this legislation, including adoption of the medium heavy duty regulations that California has established and that so many of our neighboring states are moving to adopt, as well as improving our cheaper rebate program to help make it more accessible, more affordable for everyone in the state. So I know that we've seen a doubling of the number of electric vehicles registered and on the road here in Connecticut just in the last 2 years. As folks are struggling with high gas prices, we know that buying an electric vehicle, driving an electric vehicle can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every year on lower fuel costs and lower operating and maintenance costs. Don't ask me, just ask the Connecticut Automotive Retailers Association, which was a really strong supporter of this bill. They've been seeing a real uptick in customers who want access to EVs. This bill, with the increase in funding for the cheaper program, means that will be possible. So now's a great time to get out and try out an EV and ask your dealer about the cheaper program. We're really excited about what we're doing there. But just as this bill is keeping us busy at DEEP, it's also keeping our sister agency, the Department of Transportation, extremely busy. So I'm going to welcome to the podium next the birthday boy, Commissioner Giletti. He can tell you how old he's turning today. Wish him a very happy birthday and welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Let me start by responding to the mayor. Mayor, if you're looking for a place to charge your vehicles, the partnership we have at New Haven Station has allowed for that second floor of the garage to have multiple chargers, as well as over by Long Wharf. And it's because of the support that we had from the governor and the legislature that New Haven was one of the first areas that we were able to go and put this in. So anytime you're running low, please come on over. You know, it is a partnership. So I would appreciate on that end that I'm glad you brought it up, because for those of us that haven't quite dared into the total electric but are doing the plug-in electric, we look for the same things going forward. I do want to, again, thank Governor Lamont, Senator Looney, the transportation chairs, Lamar and Haskell, and the E chairs, Bresco and Cohen, and Mayor Elicker, all of who've been very, very strong supporters on this. Yes, I did know that the mayor was a bicyclist, and I am looking into the electric bike as it gets harder to go up the hills. It's always great to be here in New Haven. I was born here. I spent my first 20 to 30 years here. I went to both my grade schools, high schools, and college here, and it's always nice to see how the city is progressing. I want to give special thanks to Governor Lamont and our legislature for leading the way in the effort to protect the environment. Transportation remains the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state, which disproportionately impacts communities of color and those of low incomes. In many communities, like here in New Haven, increased emissions from the vehicles and public transportations have led to worsening air quality, greater likelihood of asthma, and negative health outcomes. The Connecticut Clean Air Act centers communities most impacted by air pollution and the effects of climate change. This bill helps mitigate climate change and allows residents to live in the community of their choice, surrounded by clean air and clean transportation. And we at the DOT are fully embracing changes in transportation to protect our environment. Parked behind me is two of the battery electric buses and one of the battery electric school buses that right now, although there was a little bit of noise when the air conditioning was on, it's so nice to hear a bus that's behind you that's not making the noise or emitting any of the either the propane or the diesel fumes coming out because of the fact that they run that way. There are approximately 800 buses that we are responsible for at the DOT that are being replaced with no-emission electric models. They're quieter, they emit no emissions, and they last longer. Electric trains are now running, again, because of the input from the governor. He wanted to make sure as we look at the shoreline, we took advantage of the fact that Amtrak had already electrified all the way to Boston, and we're now running electric equipment between New Haven and New London, which will one day go right into Penn Station and Grand Central Station as we have direct service going forward. We also are conducting an electrification study to see if we can't do the same thing on the Hartford, the Danbury, and the Waterbury branch lines going in, so that all of our equipment will be electric and will be as environmentally friendly as possible. We're building out EV charging infrastructures, and hopefully will encourage more people to switch to electric vehicles. We're advancing safety and mobility projects like creating bike lanes, adding sidewalks, improving traffic signals, as you heard the mayor talk about in the city, the same thing around the state. The governor turned around and said, why can't we have the intelligent signals that keeps cars moving and then again further reduces our emissions? And that's exactly what we're starting to put in right now and looking to do throughout the state. These investments improve safety while also helping greenhouse gas emissions. And we know when it comes to environment, we're all connected. So Connecticut DOT is committed to doing its part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you again, Mayor Elicker, for hosting us. Thank you, Governor Lamont, for constantly reminding us of what our obligation is to this state. Thank you to our officials and advocates who have been successful at both the state and federal level to get us the money to be able to go do this. And I'll reluctantly say thank you to Katie, who keeps putting more and more on the plate as she gets me more involved in these carbon-reducing elements. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to welcome to the podium Senator Martin Looney.
Thank you, Commissioner. First, I'd like to say that I don't know about you, but I think it would have made a lot more sense to hold this news conference on the other side of the green under those nice big shady trees. First of all, obviously the Republicans who are desperately trying to find reasons to criticize us are now likely to say that Democrats don't even know enough to get out of the hot sun when they have a chance to. But this was a crucially important bill for the session, a high priority for the Democratic caucuses in both chambers. It was a single-digit bill in the Senate. We think that it really is a landmark bill in so many ways. It is going to create great progress, I think, toward enhancing the use of electric vehicles, conversion of the state's own fleet, assistance for municipalities who want to convert their fleets to electric or hybrid. I think it's going to be important to make a breakthrough on a number of and accessibility to charging stations because two issues, I think, are holding people back from embracing electric vehicles. One is concerns about range. Another is concerns about access to charging stations and how long it takes to charge in some cases. So we need to overcome those hurdles that people find inconvenient. But this is a day to celebrate this bill. I want to celebrate the achievements of the leaders of the transportation
and Environment committees. On the Environment side, of course, Senator Cohen, who's done a superb job on this, along with her counterpart, Representative Gresco from the House. And on the transportation side, our own Representative Lamar, who is a leader on so many issues not related not only to transportation but also to issues in terms of quality of life and environment, and Senator Will Haskell, who is unfortunately leaving. He was our youngest senator. Now he's going to be our youngest retired senator as he leaves to go to law school in New York. But we hope he will be back 3 years after that when he finishes. But it is a great day to celebrate. I think this bill puts a marker down that Connecticut is serious about environmental planning, about our commitments, and our concern about meeting our targets for moving to renewables and all forms of energy initiatives that will save our children in the future. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I know this would not have been possible without your leadership and support, and I do appreciate really heartfelt all of the conversations that we've had over the years on making sure we get a clean transportation policy that's equitable and that works for everyone in the state of Connecticut. So thank you, and also happy birthday tomorrow, I believe.
Thank you.
Maybe in order. Next up, I'd like to introduce our intrepid co-chairs of the Environment Committee, Senator Cohen and Representative Gresco.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Dykes, and thank you, Mayor Elicker, for having us here on the Green. It is very clear that this is not some far-off concept. We are sitting here in well over 90-degree heat. It's day after day of this. Climate change is upon us, and it's something that we need to act upon. So we are here. We heard from Mayor Elicker that this is not only a climate emergency, this is a public health emergency. In communities like this, who unfortunately get a disproportionate burden of the carbon emissions, particularly from transportation emissions, and we really wanted to make sure that we can act upon that. I will say, after last session, last year's session, not this past session, but the session before, there was a little bit of wallowing in despair on the part of my co-chair and Senator Haskell, Representative Lamar, and I, when we didn't quite get all of the legislation, the good environmental legislation that we had proposed across the finish line. That quickly, we turned it around quite quickly. Senator Haskell and I were talking throughout the summer of 2021, putting our heads together with some of our policy analysts, and really trying to determine what we could do to move forward. In that time, at the federal level, the infrastructure bill passed, and we had some dollars which we really needed to figure out how to leverage here in Connecticut. It was so important that we not give those dollars up. And so we put our heads together, both with our co-chairs as well as the commissioners of DEP and DOT, sat with the governor and talked to our leadership in the Senate about what we could do to make this happen. And I'm so grateful to Senator Looney for making this one of the Senate priorities this year. We were sending a clear message that we are not only here to combat climate change and make a difference in air quality, but we are also here to combat environmental injustice and make sure that people across the state can breathe easier. So again, so grateful for all of my colleagues who made sure that this could happen. We have so many colleagues here today standing up in support who probably won't get a chance to say to speak on this up here at the podium, but they will, they have and will continue to support this important climate legislation. So again, so grateful to all of the people involved, grateful that the governor signed this into public act, and we can move forward as leaders in this state, hoping that other states will follow suit. Representative Gresco.
Thank you. I was wallowing for a second there. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. And look, we can't make any progress. We can't evolve into the next best thing by doing the same thing over and over. And this legislation pushes us, stimulates the market in a kind way, in my opinion, to move forward in the direction that we all need to go as we go forward. And I wanted to also say thank you to the advocates, many of whom came out today, but just when I was wallowing, I would get the, I'd get the what for from the advocates, and it was motivating. And lastly, I want to say thank you to the governor, because when he was first elected at an event, he said something that he would look at the majority of issues through an environmental lens. And I want to say thank you for making good on that promise, especially with this legislation, but with other pieces of legislation. I could speak for my co-chair and for the other chairs of committees. It's easier to put your nose to the grindstone when you know that at the end of the day, when you have a finished product, leadership, thank you, Marty, and thank you, the speaker, and the governor will support that, and you will get the bill called. There's nothing worse than doing all that work and then have the thing fall short at the finish line. So that's what I really want to tip my hat to today. So thank you.
One of the other historic and unprecedented in recent times aspect of this legislation is that it gave me the opportunity for the first time to testify before a joint committee hearing of transportation and environment, and it's that collaboration between those committees that really resulted in this landmark legislation. So I would like next to welcome to the podium the co-chairs of the Transportation Committee, Senator Haskell and Representative Lamont.
Thank you, Commissioner Dykes, and thank you to everyone for coming out. Unlike our esteemed colleagues in the Environment Committee, my co-chair and I both wore long sleeves and long pants, so we're going to be a little quicker in our remarks. I just want to say thank you to everyone here. This is a product of hundreds of hours of work with advocates, interested parties across the state of Connecticut and nationally. Look, we got a recalcitrant few senators who refuse to do anything meaningful in Congress. We have a Supreme Court who's taking us in the wrong direction. It's clear that Connecticut had to step up and lead, and that we did, and we only did it with the advocates and incredible assets that we have in our Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and Department of Transportation here in Connecticut. And when Connecticut steps up and leads, other states will follow, and I can guarantee that because I've already been on the phone with transportation leaders across the country. I was out in Salt Lake for a transportation conference just a few weeks ago. This bill is the focus of those conversations in almost every state across the country. How can we take this across the states and into federal government? How can we become not only a leader here in Connecticut, but a leader for every state across our country? And with that, I want to thank just a few quick people who I think we couldn't have done this without. You've heard from some of them already, Commissioner Dykes, Commissioner Giletti. We'll hear from the governor later. Senator Looney, thank you so much for helping to identify this early on as a priority in both chambers and getting this done. Deputy Commissioner Ucalito, who every step along the way was helping us think through so many of the issues and the complex policies that we were considering, and a couple advocates that I personally want to identify who helped us think through some of the more complicated aspects of this. Kyle DeVivo at DACO, who helped us think through bus electrification in a meaningful, thoughtful way. So this wasn't a threat to the busing industry. This was exactly an opportunity for them. And without Kyle's help, without DACO's help, we wouldn't have gotten that part of this done. And Kate Rosen, who helped us think through, with a lot of time, a lot of effort on her part, helped us think through some of the cheaper modifications. How do we get electric vehicles, particularly e-bikes, into the hands of more consumers across the state of Connecticut? And with that, I just want to say thank you to everyone else who's here, who may not be behind me, standing in front of me, who did probably even more work than I did on this. So thank you to everyone.
I'll be very brief because Roland said it perfectly. In light of the Supreme Court's decision to roll back crucial environmental protections, in light of Senator Manchin's decision to put the kibosh on President Biden's bold climate plan, states have to step up to the plate because, quite frankly, we cannot wait for Washington to step up and save the planet. That's why I'm so honored and thrilled that Connecticut is leading the way with this Clean Air Act. It does things big and small, things like electrifying our school buses and making electric bikes and electric vehicles more affordable, but also small things that our constituents will notice in their daily lives, like making sure that those traffic signals that Mayor Elicker mentioned are responsive to the flow of vehicles. So not only do we have fewer emissions, but just less traffic, less idling, less congestion all around town. And that's not just true in New Haven, it's true in Fairfield County, it's true in northwestern Connecticut, it's true in all of Connecticut's 169 towns. I also just want to say that, you know, as the climate crisis worsens, as we're sitting here in exceptional heat, as asthma rates are highest in communities that are nearby I-95 or the Merritt Parkway, as kids breathe in diesel exhaust every day as they travel to and from school, we really need every level of government engaged in this fight. And that's why I'm so grateful to be standing here with this team. And I'm talking about the team behind the podium, but also the team in front of it, as Representative Lamar mentioned. It would not have been possible without the advocates. And if you're in the legislature, there's nobody who you want in the trenches by your side. No one better than Representative Lamar, my good friend Senator Cohen, Representative Gresko, and of course our champion in the Senate, Senator Looney, who decided to make this a priority. Thank you so much, Marty, for your friendship and for your leadership on this. I'll just close by saying that, look, this should have been a bipartisan bill, and to some extent it was, but the fact of the matter, what's going to become increasingly clear in years to come, is that there's no such thing as Democratic air or Republican air. There's only clean air that keeps us alive and dirty air that makes us sick. And I hope that in the years ahead, we can build on this progress in Connecticut. We can come together and recognize that we won't be asked how we voted on a particular amendment. We won't be asked for how long we spoke at a press conference even. What we're going to be asked is whether or not we stepped up to meet the existential crisis of our time, which is the crisis of climate change. So I'm so grateful for everybody here who is stepping up and meeting that moment. And last but not least, I just want to say thank you so much to Governor Lamont for making sure that this really is a priority of your administration. The ball is now in the court of the administration to get these electric buses on the road, to make sure that electric vehicles are deployed. We've created a lot of work for them, and none of this would be possible without strong partners, from the governor to the commissioners to the deputy commissioners to the folks who are actually administering the grants. So thank you all so much.
With that, it's next my honor to invite to the podium Governor Lamont. And I just want to say a personal thanks to you. We've done a lot of events talking about asthma, talking about climate change, talking about the need for clean transportation in our state. And you never have given up on that priority, and you've given us all the support at DEEP and DOT and across our agencies to make sure that we're doing everything we can, and that's how we got to this day. Governor?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Events are great, but we need action, and we've got action here. We got more days that are hotter than Hades, just like today. Looking at you, Marty, I'm sort of jealous. I mean, you can get rid of those Vote Looney potholders and go with fedoras with the Vote Looney right on the headband. It would make a big, big difference. And I've been doing this for a while now. There are more damn excuses for inaction. I care deeply about the environment. That's bipartisan. We all want to do something, but not now. We got inflation. I care deeply, and I know that we have raging forest fires all across the West, but not now. We got COVID. I care deeply about the environment, and I see severe drought and what that can impact our future, but not now. We have a recession, or we have a budget crisis. I'd like to do something today, but not now. It's Joe Giletti's birthday. I want to do it tomorrow, but it's Marty Looney's birthday. There are more excuses for inaction, and we don't accept that here in Connecticut. Thanks to Katie Dykes, and thanks to our incredible legislative leadership, we are making a difference. We're taking the lead. It goes back some time. There's very few states in the country, if any, that we're as close to a carbon-free electric grid as just about any state in the country, and what a difference that makes. But as Katie reminds me at length at 7 in the morning on the calls, the transportation sector is where we're most at risk. The transportation sector is where we're not making real progress. The transportation sector is creating more global warming and more CO2 emissions. The transportation section, as Justin Elliker said, is where you see more asthma and more conditions that are impacting our underserved communities. And that's what we're doing. And that's what we're doing in terms of the electric charging stations. That's what we're doing in terms of the electric buses you see back here. And I'm with Joe Gresko. No wallowing. We don't have time for wallowing. We're making a difference here in Connecticut, and frankly, we're making a difference with some support from the federal government as well, and a lot of support from our legislative leaders right behind me, and we're just getting started. And I'd like to think that the rest of the country will be taking notice, will be soon to follow, and making a difference every day, because we know there's no waiting, there's no not now, there's no maybe tomorrow. We're doing it today. Thanks, everybody.
everyone for being here, and to our amazing speakers. I know we may have time for a few questions if people have not fully melted, so happy to hear any questions you might have.
Governor, should you get reelected, will you be pushing for the Transportation Climate Initiative the next go-around?
It only works if you do it in association with all the other states in the region. And, right now it's not on our agenda. I got to work with the other governors on this. Thankfully, we've got money in the transportation fund. We got money for resiliency. We got money to take care of flooding. We got money for charging stations. So we have the resources we need to start getting the job done now.
Have they even expressed any interest in hearing your pitch?
Who are the other governors? Not right now, to be blunt.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you all so much for being here.
That's it.